Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe. This is Breaking Payments. I'm here with Muayad Said Ali, head of marketplaces at PPRO.
Thank you.
Muayad, welcome.
Cheers.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So PPRO, as I was saying before when we were sort of chatting about this convo, is a part of the Breaking Payments family, a great partner for us. Thank you for coming here and representing the company. Today the topic is actually particularly interesting. We talk about creators economy. 100 million people, coming to the market with very particular needs, and looks like, in search for a tech platform able to sort of getting them paid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in terms of these tech platforms, there's a lot of different avenues for these content creators to, express what they create. There's various different, from social media to very specific platforms like Shopify, where you can, obviously provide your services and products and so forth. So there's a lot of different avenues for these content creators to kind of, show what they could do.
So why don't the creators economy for us seems like everyday news, but let's talk about what we mean by creators economy, like the YouTuber who wants, but also in the gaming industry. You're the expert, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit as if our auditors were not all payment experts.
Sure. So I think with these content creators, they really want to focus on what they do best, right? And that's either creating, for example, games, creating content on these social platforms, and almost certainly it's difficult for them to kind of understand the financial services part of payments and, how money is managed and so forth. And a lot of them have kind of not a lot of experience in managing those types of things. And I think there are, again, a lot of platforms out there that can help facilitate those types of things. And, even we, PPRO, work with a lot of different tech platforms that almost take away the financial burden or the payments burden away from the content creator. So they could focus completely on what they do best. And then these platforms almost act like merchant record type models where they offer the payment facilitation to these content creators. So there's specific verticalized tech platforms that focus on specifically different types of content creation, and there's various different solutions out there, I would say.
And also because, let's talk about the challenges that these guys are facing. If we take platforms like, the fever of the situation, we're talking about maybe like a $10, $20, bill, paid maybe in Indian rupees sometimes, or in dollars from a Euro account out of Europe. It's a mess under many aspects, right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. It's so complex. There's so many different layers involved in that, from managing that money, foreign exchange, the treasury parts of that money. There's various different layers involved in the payments. It's not just the acceptance part, it's the middle part where you manage, and also kind of towards the end part, the last leg, which is kind of the payout piece as well. So it is very complex, I would say. And again, just touching on the users of these platforms, they don't really care. They just want their money at the end of the day, right? As quickly as possible. I think it's up to these platforms to make sure that they can facilitate these payments as quickly as possible, in the right way. And one of the complexities can also be around regulation as well, which we see quite a lot, certainly in Europe, when it comes to marketplaces, those types of models, especially with PSD2. It's difficult to for any kind of platform to kind of manage so many different regulations, and then payments coming from other parts of the world into a regulated market, how do you manage that and so forth? So it's really, really complicated.
And I suppose that the sort of the secret sauce, right, of this recipe is really to build this smart ecosystem with different type of players, you know, and you need sort of an orchestrator, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think PPRO is positioning itself?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think look, originally PPRO existed to make sure that any type of commerce could happen globally, even in places where banking is quite limited. So we obviously facilitated those alternative or local payment methods, and that's been our core for a long time. And yeah, we've got a number of partners around the world that use our platform to be able to kind of connect into these very digitalized payment methods in these markets. And obviously, we've made the acquisition with a company called Alpha Fintech, where they are essentially an orchestration player, but not only in the sense of workflow orchestration, where they route transactions, but it's very much, and the core of it is very much related to orchestration around products. So it's very easy for a tech platform to be able to switch on certain KYC requirements in certain markets or risk management requirements in other markets. So it's these complexities we're trying to help these tech platforms and also payment service providers to kind of tackle in that sense.
We talked about building the right ecosystems, right, for this I want to call them new rails of payments that the system needs, right?
Yeah.
And how do you deal the collaboration aspects with probably other fintechs as well, right? Because you can't possibly do everything by yourself, and one acquisition is certainly not enough.
Yeah, I mean, within our own ecosystem, within the PPRO model, one half of what we do is working with the rest of the fintech industry, right? And that's with working with digital payment methods and being able to kind of integrate their solution so that merchants on the other side of the world can access those payment methods that they would otherwise not be able to do, right? So one half is very much related to that.
I also wanted to ask the emerging market aspects, of this creator economy, because it seems to me that what is going to be super critical, but also a great opportunity, is the fact that most of these creators are actually in emerging economies, right? Yeah. So there is, on one side, a great financial inclusion aspect and impact aspect of this creators economy, but on the other hand, also the challenge of dealing with a super heterogeneous ecosystem, right?
Yeah. I think again, coming back to the point we mentioned earlier, these content creators, very much so, coming from emerging markets like in Indonesia, Vietnam, and so forth, they want to be part of the global commerce because they want to, sell their solutions to people in developed markets because actually they have very high buying powers. But also at the same time, it's difficult to be able to make sure that they get paid the right amount for the services that they're providing, right? And it's quite difficult. They need to have rails in place. And I've seen more recently, for example, with payout providers using crypto rails to be able to pay out to sellers in markets that are underbanked in that sense, but you could almost instantly issue some sort of e-wallet where it accepts crypto, and then you could convert that into some sort of fiat in the country. So I think we're seeing a lot more of those types of developments because it really does go to the heart of how these ecosystems are trying to kind of come into the world economy in that sense. So
I have actually I want to say tradition question that I ask here in the MoneyPot, which is about interesting conversations. What is one of the most interesting conversations that you had here at Money2020 so far?
Yeah. My role is kind of to look at marketplaces and work with those types of platforms and help them kind of access these very digital based payment methods. For me, I've had a couple of good conversations around giving access to those types of payment methods, where you would think that actually our solution would be out there, but actually there's still a lot of room for us to kind of work with these types of platforms, because they traditionally may work with their payment service providers and so forth, and a lot of the focus has been on developed payment methods like your traditional credit card based Visa, MasterCard payment methods, and a lot of them kind of not neglect, but to a certain extent neglect these very digital payment methods, where these emerging markets are actually becoming quite powerful in terms of buyers. They have a lot more disposable income to use and so forth. So I think that's been interesting for me to give feedback and content around those access to those markets.
So it sounds like a lot of I want to say incumbents or more traditional players didn't really yet realize or are exploring this type of new rails, I want to say, for which PPRO has kind of a natural spot, right?
Yeah, we've been working with payment companies for a long time. There's been some specific use cases for the solutions that we can help those payment companies with, but there's just so much more use cases that they can utilize as well. So it's on part on PPRO to kind of educate as well, and we've been trying to do that certainly over the last 5 years that I've been at PPRO, to be able to kind of educate these payment companies to say, well, actually, you're missing a trick with certain markets that you may not be so strong in, but actually there's a big consumer base there that you can tap, in some cases instantly. So yeah.
Muayad, we were mentioning, and I actually didn't let you talk about your experience in the previous companies, but let's just say that you have been in payments for a couple of decades, right?
Yeah.
So when we launched Breaking Payments, and PPRO being one of the great partners of it, the tagline was like payments are cool again.
Yeah.
That's why we launched this. Do you agree with this? And do you also agree that there was one point at which, before PPRO, the industry was kind of not stuck, but getting a little bit deja vu? I swear this will not be part of the the marketing review, the thingy.
Yeah. So for my own personal experience, I started working in traditional card acquiring space, and there wasn't a lot of innovation. Even your physical postures, for the one who will see the video, can already say that it wasn't the most exciting industry. Exactly.
Put
it
this way.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not making names, right? It's fine.
No, absolutely not. I'm not going to make any names up at all. But yeah, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was the most exciting part. And when I started, the key contacts in those types of in our customer base was like the financial director, the people that touch the money, and ever since I've moved into various different other kind of more, let's say, tech-focused companies, the focus has certainly been on technology. It's been focused on creating value from payments, and not just just being a rail for
perform a task.
Exactly. So for me, there's an element of payments is cool, but also at the same time, payments needs to be secure. Payments needs to be, traditionally,
Yeah, the failure is not an option. Is still there, right?
Exactly.
Because
Absolutely.
at the end you're moving money at the end of the day.
Exactly.
But I think that both, I want to say, new market context as well as technology is what is making the payment space way more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in certain markets, they've certainly leapfrogged some of the traditional developed markets in Europe, in that sense. And I think they're probably way ahead of the game. And I've had conversations here where certain things are built, even from a government point of view, are executed really well, and when it gets to the last mile, actually they kind of take a few steps back, and it's like, you know, and I'm referring to like access to data, for example. You know, it's a difficult thing to be able to manage, and where you have an ecosystem that develops that for people to access immediately, and then almost certainly kind of giving them a reason not to, because they're not meeting certain regulation and so forth, makes it a bit more difficult. But I think in emerging markets, that's I think for me that's a completely different situation. We work with payment methods like Alipay and WeChat Pay, which had tremendous growth over the last decade, and that's because, you know, the ecosystem, the government were able to kind of facilitate that type of adoption.
Muayad, day 2 out of 3 at Money 2020. You know, beside the fact that we all feel the pressure of these days, but how good is it? How good does it feel to be back to the post-pandemic life?
Yeah, it's been great. Like yesterday we had great meetings. Today we had even more. It's just been busier today, I think. So yeah, it's been amazing to kind of connect with people again, talk to people. I'm in a commercial team, so it's good to kind of physically interact with people rather than kind of seeing them over a 14-inch screen. So yeah, it's been good. Loving it. So.
Muayad, on this positive vibe, I would say thank you very much for being with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me as well.
It was a pleasure, and guys, stay tuned on Money 2020, and that was Breaking Payments. And it's a wrap.